Hi, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to provide you with an update as to what's happening in the war in Iran, and more importantly, the ongoing implications for the global economy. Now, over the last 48 hours, we've seen a really dramatic sequence of events that has sent shockwaves through the oil markets, equity markets, and changed global sentiment. At the heart of this very unusual situation was the United States and Iran appearing to have completely conflicting narratives about whether negotiations are actually taking place to bring this conflict to an end. So let's start with the key developments. On Saturday, Donald Trump issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran, demanding that it stop attacks on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. And alongside that, he made it very clear that if Iran did not comply, the United States was prepared to take direct military action, including targeting Iranian power stations. He said he would hit the biggest one first. Now, that was obviously a very significant escalation because the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important shipping routes in the world, with around 20% of global oil and gas supplies passing through it on a daily basis. And any interruption has immediate massive implications for global energy prices. That's what we've seen over the past 3 weeks. As a result of the war in Iran, Iran has basically been attacking ships that are passing near to its coastline, and that has basically stopped all traffic. So the markets were extremely nervous going into this 48-hour deadline, because if Donald Trump followed through and attacked Iranian power stations, Iran said that it was going to retaliate by hitting oil and gas facilities in surrounding countries, and that would obviously be hugely detrimental to global supplies and therefore would have sent prices soaring. However, when that deadline expired, instead of military action commencing, we saw something completely different. Donald Trump posted on social media, on his Truth Social site, that the United States and Iran had held what he described as very good and productive conversations about a complete and total resolution of hostilities in the Middle East. Now, as a result of that, he announced that planned attacks would be postponed for 5 days. So basically, there was a stay of execution. Now, this was a complete surprise, and the reaction in the financial markets was immediate. Oil prices, which had been above $100 per barrel, dropped below that level for the first time in a long time since this war started. Equity markets rallied, and overall the sentiment improved significantly. Everybody thought that we had an outcome that would basically lead to the end of the fighting. In simple terms, investors were relieved. They saw this as a potential de-escalation, possible pathway towards peace, and a reduction in the immediate global energy supply risk. However, that optimism did not last long, because shortly after Donald Trump's post, Iran's parliamentary speaker came out with a completely contradictory statement. He posted on X that no negotiations had taken place with the United States, and he described the claims as fake news, suggesting that this narrative had been created to manipulate the financial markets. And in his words, it was designed to help the United States and Israel escape what he described as a quagmire. So now we have two completely opposing narratives. On the one hand, the United States is saying that productive talks are taking place. On the other hand, Iran is saying that no talks have happened at all. And this is where things start to become very concerning, because financial markets hate uncertainty. And right now, there is a huge amount of confusion about what is actually happening behind the scenes. And as a result of that confusion, we've seen volatility very quickly return. Following Iran's denial, hostilities have continued. There have been further missile attacks reported, and Israel has launched additional strikes on targets in the region. So despite the talk of negotiations, the reality on the ground is that this war is continuing unabated. And the financial markets have responded accordingly. Oil prices have now moved back above $100 per barrel, equity markets have started falling again, and that brief period of optimism has largely evaporated. And I think what this highlights is something really important. The markets are desperate for good news. They're looking for any sign that this conflict might be coming to an end. But at the same time, they're extremely sensitive to negative developments. So what we're seeing is this constant swing between optimism and fear, and that creates instability. Now let's talk about the damage that has already been done, because this is not just about what might be happening, this is about what's already happened. According to the International Energy Agency, more than 40 major energy assets across 9 countries in the Middle East have either been severely or very severely damaged as a result of this conflict. Now that number is huge. We're talking about oil fields, refineries, pipelines and processing facilities, all of which are critical to global energy supplies. And the key point here is that even if this war were to end tomorrow, which is unlikely, that damage does not just disappear. It will take time, months or potentially even years, for some of these facilities to be repaired and brought back online. I reported in a recent video that Qatar has said that it's lost 17% of its LNG facilities for the next 5 years. That's one of the biggest LNG fields in the world, and it's really important to global supplies. So the impact on supply is not going to be just short term, it is structural and has major implications for energy prices, because if supply is constrained, which it will be because of the damage, and demand remains relatively stable, then prices will be elevated for a long time, and that feeds directly into inflation. Higher oil and gas prices increase the cost of transportation, manufacturing and heating, and then that feeds through into prices that consumers pay. So what we're potentially looking at here is a renewed wave of inflationary pressure all around the world, at a time when many economies were only just starting to get inflation under control. And that creates a very difficult situation for central banks, because if inflation starts rising again, they may be forced to keep interest rates higher for longer or even raise them further. And that would have a negative impact on economic growth. So this conflict is not just a regional issue that you don't have to worry about. It is now a major global economic problem. Now, there's another development that we also need to discuss, because it's been reported that the US and Israeli attacks have damaged a gas pressure regulation plant in Iran over the last 24 hours. And this is important because it represents another escalation in terms of targeting energy infrastructure, and that increased the risk of retaliation. If Iran decides to respond by targeting energy infrastructure in other countries in the region, then the situation could escalate very quickly, and the consequences of that would be severe. We would see further disruptions to oil and gas production, further shortages in supply, and we could see prices spiking significantly higher. And at that point, we'd be moving into territory where the global economy could start to come under serious pressure, because energy is the foundation of everything. If energy becomes more expensive, everything becomes more expensive. Now, one final point I want to mention. There's also been reports in Iran is offering oil to India at a premium to Brent crude. Now that might sound counterintuitive, because historically Iranian oil has been sold at a discount as a result of the sanctions. But what this suggests is that supply conditions are tightening and that buyers are willing to pay more to secure supplies, which again reinforces the point that the market is under pressure. And also, the reason why those sanctions were put in place by the USA was to try to restrict the amount of revenue that Iran was earning. But clearly, by lifting the Iranian sanctions, Iran is now having a bumper payday. Not only is it able to sell more oil, it's selling it at a very high price. So when you put all of this together, what do we have? We have a situation where the war is continuing despite claims of negotiations from the USA, energy infrastructure has been significantly damaged, oil prices are volatile and trending higher, inflation risks are increasing, and the outlook for the global economy is becoming more uncertain. And perhaps more importantly, we have no clear pathway to any resolution for this war, because if the two sides cannot even agree on whether talks are taking place, then it becomes very difficult to see how a meaningful peace agreement is going to be reached. So this is a situation that we need to watch very closely, and I'll keep you posted on any significant developments as and when they occur, because this isn't just a war that's happening in the Middle East that's only going to affect the Middle East. This is going to affect the whole of the global economy. And if this conflict continues to escalate, then the risk to the global economy in 2026 will increase. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative, and most importantly, thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, or maybe you didn't like it, but you thought it was interesting, then please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget, I'm currently running my competition where you can win my property or a cash alternative prize. Got some really exciting deals on the go at the moment, so please check those out. It's another way of funding the channel. Thank you also to everyone that supported me in other ways. If you bought me a coffee or sent me a YouTube super thanks or signed up as a patron or a member, thank you so much for that support. It really does help to keep me motivated. And here's something to put a smile on your face.